How was that incredibly relaxing music? I was like, I don't wanna have a conversation about polarization in America.
I took a small nap. I actually feel very refreshed now.
Yeah, totally. Hi, Nealin. Where do we find you at the moment?
You find me in Charlottesville, Virginia.
Charlottesville, Virginia. I didn't know that that's where you
Mhm.
were. Does that mean you're in the heart of the area that the subject matter in the areas that you work?
Uh, so one of the things that I've found is that there are many hearts to the subject matter and areas that I work,
It's
but
all over.
it is all over. But so too, Jenna, are the solutions and people
Oh
who are
my God. Okay, guys, this is Nealin. She's the most optimistic of everybody. Okay. This is Nealin. She is the Common Ground USA expert of the phenomenal organization Search for Common Ground. Many of you have heard me rave about their work on all of the interwebs for many, many years. I believe they're one of the most important peace building organizations on the planet. I can think of like 5 organizations that are the most important in the world: Sesame Street, Doctors Without Borders, Search for Common Ground. I probably will stop right there as being the most critical ones. I believe the work that you're doing is facilitating dignity, is just helping protect the dignity around people, or the infrastructure, so people can churn up their own dignity and their own self-worth, because you obviously can't give dignity to somebody else, but if you remind them that they're certainly worthy, certainly enough, I think they'll be better practice. I don't know, whatever. I think the world would be better. So Nealin is the Common Ground USA, like founder, but executive director, visionary, carrying the torch, all of those kinds of things. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. I am actually really excited to be here. I've never had a conversation that I didn't walk away from happier with you. So that's
Give
saying
me
something.
35 minutes, Nealin. And I expect everybody in all of the chats to show up with some really hard questions for Nealin, because Nealin and Search for Common Ground decided to come back home, so to speak. They were founded in the United States in Washington, D.C., but their focus had been abroad on the other side of both of the oceans. They had offices abroad, but they were founded by Americans. And I mean, their name sort of speaks for itself. They were in 33 different countries around the world. They're credited with preventing genocide in Burundi. They've been in backdoor conversations from East Timor to Sri Lanka, right now with the Rohingya in Myanmar, and obviously they're on the front lines of things that are happening in the Middle East. They decided they had to turn around and come back home 2016, 2017.
The earliest conversations that I had with them were in 2017, and the program started in 2021.
Why did you come back home, Nealin?
So Search had its moment, and I guess I had a similar one. I spent about 15 years working in countries overseas. I'm from about an hour back into the mountains from Charlottesville. So there's a lot of coming home that's happening right now. But I spent most of my childhood in Appalachia, and then I spent a little bit of time in Chile. I'm going way back. I'm from the South. So you asked me a question. I'm like, I'm so glad you asked that question. I'm going to go back several
Yeah,
generations
please go back to Chile.
to answer that question. So when I was 8, I lived in Chile. My dad's from Chile, and I was there when the authoritarian government was transitioning to a democratic one, and the elections there were.
I feel so ignorant. You got to give me like the 2-second background. I didn't even know. Tell me a little bit more about Chile transitioning from authoritarian to democratic, because like, has that ever been successful? But I guess it was.
So it is one of the like few examples, but one that people use a lot because it is one of the few examples where there is an authoritarian government. It's one of those things where people are like, that's not possible. So
Right.
authoritarian government is like, you don't really have to hold elections, and you have all the power, and you brought it all together in one place. And so how do you ever get out of that situation? Right. And people basically are like, well, you have to have a war. But Chile didn't. Chile had an election. There was internal, external pressure, and the head of the country decided to hold an election. And I was there that year. And on the one hand, like, that's a pretty big deal, and it wasn't a war. And then on the other hand, it also wasn't totally peaceful. So my family was there. We were caught up in tear gas and bombings and all kinds of things. So this is little baby Nealin.
Wait, sorry, how baby? Like
8 and 9.
Okay. So Nealin remembers.
Nealin remembers.
Yeah.
Yes, Nealin remembers. And I wouldn't say that like it felt like there's only 20/20 hindsight on this. I wasn't like, oh, now Nealin knows what she's going to do with her life. There was like a lot of wandering that I've had a very, very wandering life. There were some ice cream stores that I worked in. There was I had like 8 different jobs at one point simultaneously. So there were a lot of like, I lived in my car for a while. there was that windingness, but in retrospect, it was not that surprising that a little kid who spent most of her life in Appalachia and then had a part of her life overseas in these like big moments felt like part of me lived outside of the United States and part of me lived in the United States. And I wanted to bring these things together. And I would say, it's been like a real honor. It's been a real honor to be able to work for Search for Common Ground. And one of the things that happened when I was working overseas is that I saw Search's work firsthand. So I never worked for Search, but I saw who was leading their programs. And I think what was super cool for me is that it was people who, I don't know, Jenna, if you have this experience with people, but like there's a kind of like calm wisdom that so many of my coworkers have. And the best way that I know how to describe it is people who have walked through darkness and held on to the light. And it's not a kind of like, I'm happy because I just have never experienced pain. It's a choice and it's a decision, almost not cynically, but almost pragmatically, to say, I want to get to a better place. And to do that, I have to do the work of being able to see that better place. And I have to hold on to that vision. If I'm going to carry other people with me, then I have to be able to see it. So I met all these people and I was like, oh, these guys are amazing. Going back to my 8-year-old self, something that I think is relevant for what are we trying to do today. Little 8-year-old me returned to the United States, talked to a bunch of other 9-year-olds, sorry, at that point. And yeah, I don't want to lie to your people. I want to be honest, right? 9-year-olds. And there was an election in the United States also while I was gone. And so I was like, oh, you guys had an election here too, like,
must have been scary for you.
Scary, right? And they were like,
what?
Wait, what? And I was like, well, I mean, like, who did you vote for? Because as an 8-year-old in Chile, everybody knew who their family, like where their families, who'd you vote for? They were like, that wasn't like a thing. So the thing that we're trying to get to is for 8-year-olds anywhere in this country to not have to know that an election is going on and that they need to be scared. It's to be able to live and thrive. But to be able to do that, you have to have basically certain things in your society functioning. And so we care about those things and we work on those things in the United States to try to make sure that anybody who's 8 and going through this next election experiencing it as like much less important than what is on the menu for school lunch that week.
Whoo! Nealin. So my kid is downstairs and he's 8. And he's watching the second half of the first Avatar. And I am inclined to go get him and have you interview him. We're not going to. Because I am telling you, he is afraid of the next election. And he does know nuances. My father's an artist. He's he has a studio here in the States in Pennsylvania. I'm in Bucks County and in Dubai. And he is currently working on an oil painting, very, very abstract. And he's like this is the left and this is the right. And it's just like blobs of paint. It's very esoteric. But there's this little man that he's drawn. And now for Fish Named Brick, I'm very left personally. I won't speak on behalf of Nealin. But we in our family talk a lot about politics. My kids are very engaged in watching me. We have a lot of honest and hard conversations. And going into elections, they are door knocking. And my dad drew a little tiny, tiny, tiny Trump with a MAGA hat on over on the right section of the oil painting on a unicycle, like juggling. And he was like, "You guys look, see, I put a little Trump over there." And the idea is like the left has like all these vibrant colors and there's still streaks of like gold hope in the right. And like, it's a biased painting. My 8-year-old son comes in and he goes, "Ha ha ha! Trump's on a unicycle. He's gonna fall off." And he's cackling. And I don't correct him, Nealin. And I am one of those people where I am like, I want your compassion to be bigger than your heart. Like your job is to love yourself enough so that you can do nothing but love everybody. He knows nuances of the elections. He knows. So I just don't know. Either I'm messing up as a parent or what's happening in the country today is far too scary to protect our 8-year-olds, maybe.
Yeah. So I first of all, I super appreciate you being like open about those conversations, because I think one of the things that we're facing that is pretty problematic is that we feel like we can't have these conversations. And that is actually, so two things happen. One is it does become so the word polarized, just you can think of it as like North and South Pole going farther to the poles. Polarization in the United States is people pulling apart, but it's not just that. That's actually fine. People can pull apart on ideas, and that's okay. There's an element of polarization that we worry about that's where people dehumanize each other. It's where what the standards of treating somebody change significantly for someone who you think is on your side and who you think is not on your side. And there's a kind of base level of like, we always afford this dignity to everybody, that in a super polarized context, you think actually they wouldn't afford that to me, so I don't need to afford that to them. And one of the things that our brains do is that we become the heroes of our own stories. This is just like across the board, all of us. We know we're good people. We're trying to be good people. So
or we're working really hard to convince ourselves that we're good people.
I mean, to be honest, I think most people are good people. Like I don't think we have to work that hard. I think people are good. And I think people do bad, but I think people are good. So you know that about yourself, right?
Oh my God. It's like, you guys, that's the only religion that matters. Like, I happen to agree with you. I think most people are good. I think a lot of people are also hurt, and hurt people hurt people.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. They do. And
okay, keep going. Polls, dehumanization, keep going.
So, okay. So the problem is once we start to think that people aren't going to treat us with dignity, we then decide that we're on defense. We're not actually hurting somebody else. We are protecting ourselves. And by protecting ourselves, we take actions that might hurt other people, right? And might even dehumanize other people. But we experience it as us protecting, not doing anything to you, just protecting me. So the more we get into that frame, the more we accidentally do dehumanize others. We either more like directly hurt them, or harm happens to them and we don't care about it. We just don't, we tune it out. It's like it came in and it went out the other side, and we just didn't take the moment that we needed to be like, okay, well, hold on. Is this the way that we want? Is this the norm that we want for our society? If we, all things equal, is if today is the day that we start writing the new chapter of who we are these the behaviors that we want to set as norms? And a lot of what we do is thinking about what is the future that we want and how do we start building that today? But it's hard. It's hard. It's harder, I would say, right now, because most of the places that I worked overseas are places where there was a peace agreement. So there is actually a thing that you can say tomorrow is going to be different and we're going to stop the harm that's happening. We're going to make a joint agreement. We're going to move forward in a different direction. We have no peace agreement right now. We have no shared.
Who would the peace agreement be between here? Like, who would the?
Yeah, I mean, that's a fair question, because actually in the United States, we also haven't had a war. So yay, right? Like we have.
Okay, you guys just see what kind of optimists we're working with here?
It's a big deal. It's really hard to pull out of a war. And I've been in countries that have been way farther down the line and have done it. And it's incredible, but it's hard. So that's an asset that we have available to us. And I think we should hold on to that with everything that we have. I don't mean that we haven't fought wars. And I don't mean that there aren't people who live every day in fear and in fact experience constant harm. But it is different when you have an active civil war or you have an active war in your country. And those are just harder things to overcome. And they often take generations.
Okay, I can't handle the generations point yet, but I want to sort of reference some things that are happening in the chat. But before we go into answering those questions about like how you define the other, how do you actually start talking to the other, how do you know who's the other? You said something that I haven't actually heard anyone say with such simplicity, which I embrace and I personally need as I continue to navigate. You said, when we've other peopled enough, I understand what dehumanization is. I understand how in Rwanda, one side, was it the Tuts? Was it the Hutus or the Tutsis? The Hutus.
Going after the Tutsis.
The Hutus were calling the Tutsis cockroach. I understand that in Germany heading into World War III, that they were referencing Jews and Roma. World War II. This is why I hang out with you. Okay? You're gonna fix it. You're gonna fix this.
Yeah. Not heading into World War III.
World War II, they were referencing Jews as non-human. I forget the exact terms, but I know it was, describing some of their body shapes and physical attributes. So I understand like that dehumanization. But what you said was when you other somebody so much that their suffering doesn't impact you, or you don't have the same compassion for your team as you would for their team. That strikes me as real clear right now. And I see that I a little bit feel that way in some cases as it applies to folks that I don't politically agree with here. Like, there's a part of me that's like, "Okay, you think he's gonna be so great? Like, watch what happens with your the big beautiful bill, and you're not gonna be able to afford eggs." And I'm a little bit like, "Ha, ha, ha, told you so," when the truth is, I should be like, "Fuck, have some of my eggs."
Yes, I'm gonna agree on that. And I'm gonna agree on that. Like, even if you were just like doing it for yourself, even if you were like, as a strategy, I'm going to say, have some of my eggs. And it wasn't coming from like a magnanimous place. I think that like, we got to start building tomorrow today. Fine. But there's a lot of studies that have shown that it's that kind of, somebody put in there Schadenfreude, or that's that kind of dismissiveness that is what turns people off from the things that you care about. And it makes it harder for you to build bigger coalitions. And it makes it harder for people who are on the edge and thinking like, maybe I like what you're talking about, maybe I don't. They don't feel welcome in whatever it is that you are building. And so if you're trying to build a box that more people are going to be in, then that kind of like I will demonstrate to you that you
Still
deserve dignity
belong. Yeah.
and still belong
Yeah.
is a strategy.
So I'm going to, and you don't have to answer this now because I know it's sort of going to be answered throughout the conversation, but GoBird76, the best handle on Twitch, by the
Oh,
way. Go Birds. And Go Birds, if you keep coming back, I will continue to give you that kind of credit. But they asked about how hard it is to start talking to the other. One, sometimes it's not even entirely clear what the other is, but two, just like this idea of like, I don't think a lot of people want to talk now. Because what are they talking about? What are we going to do? Debate the nuances of how the big, beautiful bill is going to impact Medicare and Medicaid? Guess who doesn't know how it's going to impact Medicare and Medicaid? 100% of the people. You know,
that
like,
should stop us. Gosh.
right, exactly. Like, we're not starting there. Whenever I get harassed by trolls on social or after I go on air, which is every single time everyone has feedback, my response is always, oh man, you must be as afraid as I am. I'm scared.
Mhm.
I'm scared. And I
Yeah.
did it one time to Sarah Palin on air,
And
and it worked. And she goes, "Oh, baby." Okay. She's like 76 or 80, 100 years old,
Mhm.
and she's in a mini leather skirt.
Mm.
Jay, if you can find it, it's when I was on News Nation. I was on News Nation with Chris Cuomo. Chris Cuomo? Yes, Chris Cuomo. It was right before the election, and she was in a bar stool out to the mini leather skirt and her
Yes.
leather. I mean, like, good for her. She's like a great,
Yes.
great, great grandmother. She likes to make it. And she
Yeah.
goes, "Oh, honey, I don't want you to be afraid." And I was like, "But I am." And I went into why I was. And it was a real moment of like crossing over.
Mhm.
Um, but I
Mhm.
also feel, Fish Named Brick, which is also a good handle, but not as great as the birds, is I they mentioned that seeing others get away with certain things, like how do you hold people accountable or draw your boundaries when you're like, but I also need you in my coalition?
Mm-mm. Yeah. Listen, okay, so there are a couple of things that are coming up here that I think are super interesting and super important and that actually everybody deals with. So let me start with how do you have the conversation and then get to like how do you hold people accountable? These things are connected, but how do you have the conversation helps answer the second one. So, first of all, I have conversations only when I want to learn something. And if I don't want to learn about the other person, if I can't find it in myself to want to learn about the other person, then I probably shouldn't have a conversation. But it turns out that there's a ton of stuff I don't know. And there's a ton of stuff where we've flattened each other's identity. It's a natural part of our brains that we are very complicated and we look at other people and we think they are very uncomplicated. Like that you could just say, a Kamala Harris voter if you are a Trump voter, and that would just be one whole group of people, or vice versa. That like this is what MAGA looks like, that's a standard thing that we do in our heads. And it turns out when you have conversations with people that you super disagree with, you find out that flattening is not true, and that your ideas for what the solutions could be are much richer if you have those conversations, and that in fact you can have a lot of shared values, and from those shared values you can come up with a lot of different solutions. So great. um, it's useful to me. I have a reason to be in this conversation, and the reason is not to convince. I'm just for a second here, I'm going to say, Jenna, we have nothing in common. We disagree about everything, and I want to have
No,
a
I
conversation.
would be very excited to play the other side. If you want to give me like a subject, I'm like, all
A
I'm
subject.
game.
Okay. I think the
How about
firefly.
climate change?
Oh wow. Okay. So okay, I was going with the fireflies in Virginia are the best in the whole wide world.
Oh, is that where we should
That's my
start?
position. That is my position. And I feel very
Okay.
strongly. I thought we had to start with something we felt very strongly about, and I feel very, very strongly about this
Is
topic.
this like a tactic where you're just like, we're gonna role model baby steps?
Yeah, yes, because we always think we've got to jump into the deep end of the pool, and it turns out if you don't know how to swim, you're going to be bad in the deep end of the pool. You got to start somewhere in a conversation.
Okay. First off, I just want to flag one, thank you for this. I'm getting quite the schooling. Two, a little bit, it gets a little cranky. particularly when it feels like it's losing on my behalf. So it will just if I suddenly freeze, just keep talking, it will come back. It will come back. But I actually wanna go with I we, Philadelphia has the best sports fans.
That's where you wanna start. I feel like that's actually really controversial.
Oh, okay. Are we not allowed to start with something controversial?
No, we can. We can. You are in fact, freezing a little bit though. So until you catch up to that, I really love Go Birds is so on your team right now. You can just say anything, and Go Bird 76 is gonna just, like, jump in and have your back. Um, so I don't know if I am also freezing or not. If
No,
I
it's
am
just
not,
me, Nealin.
it's just you. Okay, so let
It's
me
just me.
so let me say a couple
I
of
can
things
hear your
before we model
audio
this.
and it's fine. It's fine. It's just I
Okay.
can hear your audio and Go Birds will take it if I can't, but just keep going. So Philly has the best sports team.
Okay, so let me say a couple of things that people should be looking out for. One is that people should look out for the like having a conversation to learn, not to win. This means that I'm going to ask a lot of questions. It means also that part of our conversation is about facts, but most of our conversation is about um, emotions. Most of our conversation to begin with is about conferring dignity. In really, really tough conversations where people are very passionate about an issue, really, really disagree, there's the expectation, and usually backed by some reality, that the other person you're talking to is not going to be listening and is not going to afford you the dignity of letting you talk. So, in these kinds of conversations, the first thing you want to do is turn that on its head, and you want to listen. You want to listen, not in a like smarmy because it's a tactic way, but because you want to learn, and people can feel the genuineness of that. I'm assuming I'm still here, but
Yeah, you are. You're fine.
I'm
Keep
just
going. You're doing great. You're doing great. If you can hear me, you're doing great. We're dealing with my camera independently, but keep
okay.
going.
Okay, great. So uh the second thing that's kind of related to this is it's really useful for you to own something on your side that means that you could be wrong, so I don't have, as it turns out, don't tell Jenna this, but I don't have strong feelings about Philly fans or other fans and who's the best. But let's say that I super did. Let's say that I was like, oh God, Philly fans are actually the worst fans. Um, then what I would do is say, well, listen, like some fans from other states that I have lived in have behaved in ways that would annoy me too. And I can give an example of that. So that's something that I wish we wouldn't do. And that's not owning the entire problem yourself. It's just acknowledging that there's more than one side. And if you can't get to like something that you dislike about your side, then a kind of baby step in that direction is listen, if I saw what you see about my side, I would probably think that way about my side too. But I've seen something else, and this is what I've seen that's different. Are we back in, Jenna? Are we back
I don't
in?
know, but keep going. I'm learning. I'm listening to learn, Nealon.
Oh, yeah, you are. Yeah, you are. I feel like you're conferring dignity. I feel like this whole process, even with you jumping on and off, has been one in which I am enriched, I am cared for, etc.
Aw, that
Um,
means a lot. Wait, just even saying that makes me feel like, okay, I'm showing up and I'm doing a decent job. Like, so, but I do, because Fish Named Brick said something that I really struggle with, because I struggle with it a little bit in my personal relationships, is this idea of like, you have to accept the other person might be not be there to listen. Where does that come from? Because when I go on air with the other side, there's no listening and nobody concedes. Everyone just like has their talking points and they show up and they're ready for it.
So, I mean, there's a little bit of a difference between going on air and having a conversation. And
Okay,
it's
fine.
rarely my first recommendation to videotape and live stream your difficult conversation with somebody that you don't have a relationship with. You can definitely have deep conversations with people that you have a relationship with. And you can have talking point conversations with people that you disagree with. And you can sometimes get past that. But um, on things like social media or media, like when you're there to deliver your talking points, you're not actually digging in to learn from each other in the same way. You're talking often to your own audience with another player in the room versus talking to each other. But in a conversation one-on-one with somebody else, that's a very different dynamic. And you have the opportunity. And I would recommend, again, if you're like taking a first step, do it one-on-one and have that conversation not in front of an audience if you can, because it makes a difference.
Okay. Nealin, give me 1 second. I don't know if you can still hear me. Jay, can you riff for 1 more minute? Just keep going by yourself. I'm gonna turn off my camera. I'm gonna come back in,
Okay.
okay? But
Good
just
luck
keep
to you.
going. So you're setting the stage. I can still hear you on some of the other devices. So you're setting the stage.
So,
So you already have to accept the
so
fact that people are not listening.
yeah, sorry, there was a little glitch in the sound, but I got there and I'm riffing and go have fun. Fish named Brick, I will say, I think that that's very insightful. I guess you can't make the other person listen, so just accepting that as well. Particularly if you're the person who wants to have the difficult conversation, you got to walk in knowing that somebody else hasn't signed up for a learning conversation, and they might be in a different place. Not I don't say like you have to talk to everyone all the time. The first thing I tell people is like pay attention to yourself. Are you ready to have that conversation? Do you feel centered? Do you know your triggers? Are you comfortable enough? Do you actually want to learn? And if you're not there, then your first step is not having a conversation. Your first step is getting to where the answer to those questions would be yes. Once you know yourself, you can start having the conversation with somebody that you disagree with and genuinely learn from them. So us versus the problem and me versus you, again, is another, I would say, super insightful thing. Is this like secretly somebody who works at Search who's writing this? Because yeah, one of the things that we talk about a lot is that you got to put people on the same side of the table. So we often think of a conversation. I'm sitting here, you're sitting across from me at the table, and we are talking at each other to get to deal with the problem. So um, so like you could be, so it's like a kind of adversarial setup. But if you put people on the same side of the table, this would be you sitting right here next to me, and the computer would be the problem. And we were trying to figure out how to solve that together. It's a very different orientation. And that's sort of like, listen, polarization and violence, these do not help anyone. This is a shared problem. You are not the problem. I am not the problem. We have a shared problem. And the only way we fix this is together. You can't one-sided have a ceasefire. That has to be a thing that happens. And I meant that metaphorically, but that has to be something that you decide to do together. And okay, so what are some of the methods that I recommend for people to recenter themselves during those difficult conversations? Great question. Um, so there's a lot that that like meditation teaches you about just paying attention to your body. Like you can just feel. I'm not a meditator, actually. I'm a terrible meditator. I actually flunked out of meditation in college. I was a Buddhism major, and that was my lowest grade in my whole life. But I get the concept, and the concept is like just pay attention to what's happening in your body. So um, you can feel your heart beating faster. You can feel just sort of like something like making your head feel more pressure. What are some of the things that you can do? They're like kind of tried and true things, but you can take a breath and like there's the like 4 in, hold it 4 out. That buys you 12 seconds. 12 seconds can make a big difference in a conversation. Another tactic that I use is I say there's like some stock like phrases. So if I'm in a moment where I'm like, wow, I cannot even with this conversation, this is like, what did you just say? One of the things that I will say is, tell me more. And I don't have to think really hard to say that sentence. And I don't have to like search through all of my emotions to say that sentence. But if I say that sentence, then the other person can say more things and I can learn from those and I can take the conversation in another direction. Um, how do you know your triggers? Well, you're back in here, Jenna. I think that
Because I'm actually thinking about a circumstance within my family.
okay.
So, and I don't know, and also fish named Brick, make yourself known if you are a search employee. Only because then we're gonna expect harder questions from you. But, I think one of the questions that Gobert 76 had mentioned about like the other and identifying who the other is like it's not like you know who the other is when you're waiting in line at CVS. Like it's often the relationships that you have with those closest to you where there's layers of other bullshit. So, Red Cross, all right, hey, thank you for your work.
There we
Um,
go.
but the idea of like if I think about like a conversation that I need to have with my aunt, like I'm also really frustrated about how like she's gotten particularly religious and then she's like, trying to convert my grandmother and like there's all these other layers that I feel like could trigger me. And
Yep.
and I love I love your, like, safety buoy word of, like, "Tell me more," because that's your, like, indication to yourself that you need to sit back and completely reorient to the compass. But, like, to me, 1, I feel like those really hard conversations are likely with people closest to you, unfortunately, and
Yep.
therefore, there's all this other bullshit that you have to
Yep.
navigate.
Yep.
Um, and then
Yep.
what?
So I this is where I think compartmentalizing and setting the rules, if you will, for the kind of conversation that you're having is really important. So if I am talking to somebody in my family that I love, but that I am struggling with, I will say up front, you and I really disagree, I think, on this issue. And I care about you and I respect what you have to say. So I'd like to have a conversation where I can learn more about where you're coming from. Do you want to have that conversation with me?
Right. And they're first gonna go no, because they don't want to, but they also wanna meet you where you are because they want to help you because they care about you too.
Um,
Yeah.
I have found that they often say yes. I have found that not always, but I used to teach courses on this to graduate students, and one of the things that I did is over fall break, I would tell students you have to go home and have a difficult conversation. You don't have to have it at your home, but you've got a week before, I mean, 2 weeks before you have to come back to this class, and in those 2 weeks, you have to have one of these conversations. Bar none. They had so many harder assignments in the class. This is the one that filled
Yeah.
my office hours. This is the one where I had to have a separate extra session to walk people through what was
The
it gonna be like.
script.
And like the stress and and then without exception, at the end of break, people would come and at least one person had chosen a member of their family, terrified, sure it was gonna blow up,
Yeah.
and uh, and had a transformational moment where I was like, I hadn't talked to my uncle in years, and I didn't see any way out, any way forward in our relationship, and this was life changing for us. I now am in communication with him. Now, I don't want to say that that is
Right.
always the case because
Right.
sometimes people have a defensive snark at the beginning. They're like, "Oh, are you sure you want to listen? Because it
Right.
hasn't been you
Right.
before." You know,
Right. Right.
that
Right.
that is defense. That's self-preservation right there. That's I am afraid to have a real conversation with you because I don't know how to deal with this either. So sometimes you have to hold that, and you have to receive a little bit of that. Should you have to do that? No. If you want to have these kinds of conversations, yes, you have to do some of that.
Okay. Let's everyone get your pencils out. Say this again. I think you and I might disagree on a number of things. Okay, let me introduce myself. Okay. Okay.
Do it in Jenna words. Don't.
Okay, hold on.
Yeah.
Hold on. I'm now getting a phone call, which is gonna botch the whole computer thing. Okay.
You could pick up the phone, see if it's somebody you disagree with.
No, they're in Taiwan, and I'm just gonna wanna talk about Taiwan, China, and that's not this conversation.
Be nice.
I think they're on their way to the DMZ right now. Okay. If you're open to it, I would love to sit down and have a conversation with you about reproductive rights, because I think I have a lot to learn from you and your perspective and how you got there, and I don't know what I don't know.
And do you want to have that conversation with me?
And are you open to having that conversation with me?
Yeah.
I'm gonna throw up right now, Nealin.
Maybe that's what we disagree with on Jenna. So okay, so that didn't feel good. Tell me more. That wasn't me having a hard time in this conversation. I genuinely want to know more. Why are you going to throw up?
I actually want to cry. I am really, really shook. I feel abandoned by their beliefs, by their ignorance. I feel violated by them. I feel confused, and because they don't, I mean, this is what I wanna say and what I also know I can't say. I wanna say because I don't think they care about my daughter and my daughter's rights and my son's need to potentially get an abortion and all of those things, but I also know they do care about them.
Okay, but you don't have to not say that. In fact, you just said two really important things that I think in a conversation like this are really important scene setters. One of them is I am afraid, and I want to have this conversation, but I also want you to know that I am afraid, and I have a lot of emotions attached to it. So I'm going to do the best that I can in this conversation. And then you said two things. One is I'm having this conversation because it feels to me like you don't care, but I'm looking at you and I love you and I know you love me. I know you care. And I'm talking about this is in your family, right? Like this isn't like Joe on the street. Actually, I know a lot of Joes that I love dearly, so there's no good name to throw out there. This is not like an average person. This is somebody in your family who, changed your diapers, did like they care, right? I know you care about me, and I know that our relationship matters to you, but I am afraid.
But do I?
It depends, right? So like maybe you don't.
Okay, I really fucked up. I have an apology I owe to some family members.
Okay.
I know, this is but whatever. We're in a safe space. We're only live on 4 platforms.
Yeah, that's it.
I only know 3 people's names on here. It's fine.
Yeah, great.
Right after the election, for those of you, I don't think any of you know outside of like 4 or 5 people, but I worked so hard in Pennsylvania. So hard. And not that it was like, I feel like I owe Pennsylvania, like I fucked up Pennsylvania. I know that I didn't, but
Yeah.
I don't know if I screamed loud enough at the campaign. Like I kept saying things like, it's not adding up. It's not adding up. Something's not adding up. These doors are too undecided, too close. Da, 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 da. I did do that, but like everyone told me to like sort of chill out. So I sort of bit my tongue a lot more than I think I should have. So amongst all the 8 billion people in the entire world who were like, what the fuck is happening over there? We were all devastated and shocked on the 6th. And I sent a text message to a family member about said aunt. And they said something about, like, we were differentiating votes between one of the uncles and one of the aunts who both voted differently than we were hoping that they would. And one of my uncles voted fiscally, and my other aunt voted religiously. And I said, in reference to the religious vote, she's part of a cult or something like that.
Mm,
And I
mm,
put it in text,
mhm.
which I don't know if anyone's ever told you not to do that.
One's never no, no.
I don't know if anyone's ever told you not to put
You wanna
controversial, unkind things in writing.
yeah, yeah, but you're gonna
Yeah.
be the first to tell me that. So
Yeah,
now, like,
yeah.
in fact,
So, why
this
don't you just learn from my lesson?
okay, okay.
Okay, so in those moments of devastation, even if you think you can trust the person
Mm,
implicitly, so it got, you know where the story ends. It
right.
got back to said aunt.
Mm, mm,
Now
mm,
the challenge is that um I actually believe it,
mm,
which
mm,
is not also healthy. I'm really so pissed at all the Abrahamic religions, including my own Judaism. Um, so anyway, so it's like that, and she's the one that I'm like, I owe her an apology because I will die on the mountain for anyone to pray to whatever God they want to. I will. I also think they're all the reasons why we have all the problems. And the rise of Christian nationalism in this country is going to be for another conversation between you and I. But I'm like, fuck. And it's a vote in Bucks County. Pick one up.
Okay, so, I would go back to your earlier question of how do you know your triggers? I think you do know your triggers. I think you can sense them in yourself, and I think there's a question, like, listen, you don't have to want to have a relationship with this, with your aunt or like with whoever the equivalent is for anybody who's watching. Like you don't have to. But if you want to, that's one thing. And then the other thing is, uh, if you want to be able to talk to somebody who voted differently than you do, I think it is useful to know that whoever they is, didn't vote for what you voted against.
I don't know if that's true, though, when it comes to repro.
So,
If that's a single issue, it's one of many reasons why I voted against or for, however you're going to.
so I am not saying that that there isn't a policy that has like lines in it, but what I am saying is you are voting against the fear of harms. They are not voting to harm. Does that make sense?
But hold on, Nealin. Hold on. This goes back to like the accountability thing. If you're a single issue voter
Mhm.
and you are anti women's bodily autonomy, that is for harm.
So help me out here because I
We're
appreciate.
doing it. We're in it now.
Yes, we are doing it. We are doing it. What I'm saying is that they are not voting on the platform. Somebody says, here's your platform. Your platform is pro harm, anti harm. I'm not talking about any policy. I'm talking about like, do you want to harm people or not harm people? That's the question, right? And in your mind, you're like, I don't want to harm people. And therefore I fall here. And in their mind, they're like, I don't want to harm people. And so I fall here.
Right. But if their belief of not harming people does harm, okay, you're getting there.
Yes. Yes, that I understand. And that is, but the reason that this is important, breathe in 4, hold it 4, breathe out 4.
Box breathing.
Yes, we're doing it. Um, so the reason that this matters is because if what they are trying to do is actively harm in the same, if what they did is say like, actually, I want to hurt Jenna's daughter. I want to hurt Jenna's son. That is actually the frame that makes me excited. And when I imagine that in the future, I feel good about that. That is a very hard person to work with.
Okay. And you're saying that person likely is not thinking that.
I am saying that.
Yeah.
And I am not saying that there aren't times that the actions that we take, in fact, there are many times the actions that we take harm each other. But it is just fundamentally different to be talking to somebody who's doing it because they get a kick out of harming you, and a person who is doing harm but understands it in a different frame. And
Okay.
here's why this matters for you is because if you don't understand the frame for them from within them, the steel man version of their argument, it's going to be very hard to reach them.
Mhm.
It's a slow
Okay, and
it's
I think no, I'm totally tracking, and I see all these people watching, and I'm like, "Who wants to tap in for me now?" Um, but I get it, I'm tracking. So, you're saying, "Jenna, be bigger and see if you can navigate, consider, think about the frame, their steelman frame." And I can. I can't quote it, but this is my assumption that abortions terminate innocent life that doesn't get to have a chance.
Okay.
That's the frame.
Okay. Okay. I would say
That
there
uh,
are people that I would agree with that that's their frame. Yeah.
that their theology says, and I forget the quote, but like you were born, you God created you in the womb.
Yeah.
Okay? That's another frame.
Mhm.
That sometimes there's frames of yeah, actually I think those are the only two
Mhm.
that feel dramatic and feel clear and universal.
Mhm. Okay. So once you get there, you can pivot the conversation to away from the position. Like you get that. You hear here's where you stand. You want to pull away from that. And you can pull away in two different ways. One is you can ask for the stories that inform the position. So what happened in your life to make you feel that way?
Verse asking for the position.
Yeah, because the the position is going to have a lot of talking points attached to it.
Correct, and positions are only, like, this deep.
That's right.
What happened in your life that helped that
That
what
help
was that?
form that belief. That help form that position. And then
What
try to
happened in your life that helped form that belief?
push them back as far as you can, like go as because a lot of times these things happen when we're young and when we're forming. And for some of these beliefs, there can be a lot of identity wrapped around them, and there can also be a lot of fear.
And what
Every
about shame? What role does shame play in that?
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. Not that's a big driver, and it's a big and it's those kinds of things that sometimes can, for some people, form these kind of vociferous platform kinds of votes because there is a little person inside us that we are protecting, and that little person deserves to be protected. And this is not always the case, but I find it a helpful frame for allowing someone to let off steam, quite frankly, in conversations without me having to hold and receive that as like something coming at me, but instead to see it as like you are protecting a something important to you in your identity, and this conversation is pulling at those strings in ways that can be very
Okay.
scary.
Okay. So, and that conversation is you meet their grief, you meet all those truths, you meet that life experience with a lot of compassion. And then when do you pivot and say, and?
So sometimes you don't in a first conversation. I think that people are like pretty impatient for these kinds of conversations to go at the same speed as a general policy conversation.
Right.
They don't. That's not a reasonable expectation. Sometimes you have a conversation and you end it, and success of the conversation, this is a big part of like I said like setting up the conversation for success is really important. So is ending it with a like a reasonable expectation of what success can look like, right? So sometimes what it looks like is you walked away from a conversation with your aunt or with somebody that you disagreed with, where you think, I would be up for another conversation. That doesn't.
I still feel nauseous.
I mean, yeah, I understand that. I understand that.
Maybe it's also because I feel like I want to grieve with her too about that life experience of hers as a child, or um theoretical life experience of hers.
Yeah.
Um I just
But like I even having you tell that made up story right now, I wanted to protect that person.
right,
I cared, and I thought, you know what, that's not actually an experience I would want for anyone I
right,
care.
right.
And that made me enter into a different place. And it is from that different place where I all of a sudden genuinely cared. I wasn't making it up. I felt that in listening to your story. Um and I by going back to like what are the experiences, I have a richer understanding of the things that get to the policy positions. And it's very easy to be like, you don't care about me. But when it's actually not about me, it's about something that's happening in your life experience, then I can stop focusing on how it affects me and think about how does this manifest for you. And when I think about it that way, I'm oriented to language that is going to be more compelling to you. I'm oriented towards um, empathy that makes somebody more creative. And okay, so I said maybe your first conversation, all it is like, okay, I could do this again. And there's no pivot to like, okay, great, now let's solve the policy. What you want to be moving towards is identifying shared values, growing your empathy, and seeing it as a more complex narrative.
Okay.
And while you are doing that, that's it. Like like slow down. All of us slow down for a conversation like this. We have to slow down.
Okay. 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 We're slowed down. Sort of.
Okay.
We're slowed down. So let's also pretend, if I can push you a little bit.
Sure.
Let's pretend it's, well, because this is what I think someone offered the biblical quote, Jeremiah 1:5,
Mm-hmm.
because this is what that thing said.
Mm-hmm.
I have no life experience, but this is my faith. He's my savior. Or if we talk about the Arab Israeli crisis,
Mm-hmm.
uh, because Jerusalem belongs to us or to
Mm-hmm.
me, or what,
Mm-hmm.
because this is what these, what do you do when it comes to like, okay, I got another real hard one for
Okay.
you. Now
Okay.
that we've covered the Middle East, all of theology, I'll just keep it
I got,
light and
what do you
simple.
have now?
He said he wasn't friends with Epstein. So if he said he wasn't friends, like, what do you, so it's one thing if there's like a life experience that you can be
Yeah.
like, I'm going to carry some of that grief with you.
Yeah.
I see that.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry. What else do you want to tell me about it? I get all that. I can do that. What happens when this person, as we were identifying as the other, is like, because they said so, because the scripture said this, because he's the president, I'm going to do what he says.
Sure. Sure. So, we often think I said a little bit of this before, but we often think we're having conversations about facts. And he said so, and I said so. And, I get my facts from science. I get my facts from faith. I get my facts from, like whatever and these are my facts. And I'm going to put those facts back out there. And for some conversations, facts are pretty important. For a lot of these identity conversations, a lot of these conversations where like we are really passionate and we really, really care about a thing, the emotions are as important as the facts. And so like you can ask people things. This is a partisan example, but I remember after the first inauguration, and it was like the Monday after inauguration or Tuesday after inauguration.
You're talking about January 20th, 2016.
2017, but yeah.
2017.
Mm-hmm. And there were a bunch of photographs. And I think it was the Washington Post that had a photograph of Obama's inauguration and a photograph of Trump's inauguration. And Trump had gone out and said, this is the biggest inauguration in the history of inaugurations. And then there were these two photos next to each other. And it was really clear that that there were a lot more people at the Obama inauguration for Trump won. I mean, for Obama won than Trump won. And they went around to Capitol Hill and they were asking people who voted for Trump or supported Trump to look at these two pictures. And they would sort of like slide the two pictures across the table and say, which one has more people? And at this point, like people actually knew what these photos were. And they would point to the one who were supporters. They would point to the one that had fewer people and say, this one has more people.
You mean for the people who voted for Trump?
Yeah. Yeah. And they would say, this one has more people. Okay. Why would you do that? You would do that because you are like, you know what? I am not going to fall into your game. You don't tell me who I am. I will not be made fun of by you. And I just reject this entire conversation and I'm going to go a totally different direction. And that's a tactic actually that we use when we are disengaging in a conversation. And we are willing to distort facts in ways that allow us to win in the moment because we have an emotional truth or we have a separate truth that we are then going to justify in whatever way we need to have the conversation go our way. So I've gone a little bit farther away, but my point is that that conversation for the Trump supporters was not a facts conversation. That was an emotions conversation, and that was
get from facts to emotion.
Sorry, say it again.
They took it because if it's such a clear difference, those two photos, they opted out of. They took it out of a fact. We're comparing to apples here.
Yes.
They're like, I'm not playing that scientific game. I'm making it an emotional fuck you because I know what you're trying to get me to cave on.
So
which turns into an emotion thing.
Yes, I would argue that that's what they were doing in that conversation. And I would argue that that has nothing to do with their political ideology. That is actually something that we all do, is that we hone in. I mean, that one's a pretty extreme example, but we will sort of like hone in on the facts that support the emotional truth that we feel. And that
that we feel or that we want to feel, because because theoretically, like the people who pointed to Trump's and said that this is, Jay, do you mind bringing up a side-by-side of those two photos? Because anyone who compares those two photos sees all the white on the mall. Like there's no ifs, ands, or buts about who has, so they are intentionally lying.
No. So what I would say in this case is this is actually a these facts versus these facts situation. So to answer the question of like who has more people, that is one set of facts. To answer the question of like in that case, and I'm going to get, I have to think quicker on my feet than 9:30 is allowing me, but the conversation that they were having was much more of a conversation about like how you treat me and if I'm going to play your game. And so that is like opting out. But there are other, yeah, there it is. There it is. Thanks, Jen. But there are other kinds of conversations
Sorry,
where,
can I just be real clear for those of you who are watching? I know this because I loved this debate because I organized the Women's March, which was the day after his inauguration, which also made it look, but the whole thing was in the crowd counting is that you could see all the white on his and none of the white on Obama's, which was on the left. But they were saying, oh, well, they didn't have the white on Obama, so the white didn't push through. So, like, if this is a comparing apples to apples, there's no debating. It is very factual what the difference is.
right. And
Current
you're
event.
never going to get to a real conversation by continuing to say there are more people on Obama's picture. You're like, that's the like, you can say that until you're blue in the face and you won't have made any
Progress.
headway in actually figuring out what to do about it. So so like that is a good example in some ways. It's a bad example in others because I it's not just sort of like about the emotions. It's actually like I just opted out of your whole conversation. But that is actually a thing that happens in these conversations is that we push the facts that we know thinking that that's going to be really effective.
Right.
But it's not, that's not what you, that's not the
You
conversation.
can't win with fact wars.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so then what do you do? And I think Kieran's point is great of how do we bring conversations back from being emotional to factual with respect for their opinion while still maintaining a factual stance. I mean, I think that's the question of the time,
Yeah.
which is like, how do you protect somebody's shame and embarrassment around how many people might be on the mall for the person that they voted for compared to the person that you voted for? And be like, and make it feel safe for them to come over with you. But also there's the accountability and like being like factual about it. I mean, the mall thing doesn't matter, but when it comes to if we go back to reproductive rights and women bleeding out in parking lots, like that becomes, I don't care about your emotion. She needs a DNC to survive and take care of the rest of her children.
So I think that first of all, Karen, you've asked a lot of really good questions.
He's so good.
Yeah, yeah.
And he's like 10 years old, speaking of. He's like
Hold
20.
on, is this your son who's downstairs watching Avatar?
I wish. I wish. No. Kieran is a wonderful team member who is 18, 19, 20,
I
21.
love it. I love it. So uh, it has to do a little bit with an order of operations. You can't jump into the facts. You have to deal first with the emotions of the conversation. You have to create a safe container. You have to demonstrate to the person that you're talking to that you're not asking gotcha questions and you're not there to
Mhm,
humiliate
mhm.
them. You
But
sometimes,
that's probably worthwhile saying. I'm not here to show up and do gotcha. I'm not here to like sling sound
it's worth
bites.
saying, but it's also, you got to do it. You know, like you got to give them a chance to have gotten it wrong and for you to help make it right. So, so the difference between somebody throwing something out and you can very easily point out the factual error versus, so okay, so what I heard you say was X, but what I think might be a nuance on that that would make sense to me is if we added Y to it, and so that's different from X is wrong and here's why. That's also different from here's your X and here's my Y. What you're doing is helping walk the conversation into their being safe. It's not enough just to say, I'm not going to get you. It's that you are actively working to give their story and their argument space.
So, shall we role model the mall scenario? Like, what's an
Look, you can pick whatever.
let's do the mall scenario,
Okay.
because I would love to see this from you on that. So, the Trump had the most amount of attendees at his inauguration. Nealin?
So I actually haven't counted, but why do you say that?
Well, because look at it. I mean, there wasn't a white floor underneath Obama, so it doesn't pop out. And he had the popular vote. I don't think he did in 2016, but look at all the amount of people who voted. I mean, who wouldn't vote for him?
Well, I think if I were doing this myself, I think that I think actually that's a really interesting question. Who wouldn't vote for him? But I'm interested from you, and why did you?
Okay. Because this country is on the brink of wokeism and all the woke lefties and the scripture. Okay, no, let me give you something better to work with. Let me give you something better to work. Look, he's been a really successful businessman. Look how much money he's made. This country spends too much money. Look at our debt. We need someone who's going to drain the swamp. We need someone who's going to like get things back in business. We don't have time to we don't have space, we don't have time, we don't have enough money to say yes to all the social programs the left wants.
So you may not know this about me, but I actually have lived in DC for years, and I can vouch for the fact that it is in fact a swamp. The mosquitoes there are absolutely terrible in the summertime. And fun fact, you actually got danger pay if you were an ambassador to the US until the mid 1800s, because we had malaria in that swamp. So
really,
you're gonna get no pushback from me on the swampness in the actuality.
See, I told you DC is a swamp.
I know. And I am agreeing with you in that factual part. But in metaphoric terms, one of the things that I found from living there is how many people came because they cared about something bigger than themselves. So one of the things that I would love to hear from you is how to balance that. You know, like how do you keep what's good? The people who care about the same things that you and I care about. And still, for example, when I worked in government, I found red tape to be just mind-numbing. And there were things that I really wanted to do that I felt like I couldn't do. So what would you do?
Well, yeah, I think we need to build more apartment buildings and affordable housing in Florida along the coast or in California. And there's too much red tape around like where we can build, and we have to protect all these national parks, and it's ridiculous. It takes 10 years to get a permit to build an apartment building in California these days.
So it feels to me like you've had personal experience with that, and I'm wondering if you could tell me more about your experience.
Well, I'm just an investor. Okay. Cracking myself up.
Oh, I forgot that you were just an investor.
I'm just an investor. I'm just a real estate investor, and I've tried to look at deals. I try to look at deals in these states, and I can't. I mean, like with Newsom, he's turning California into a second swamp. But like I just it's not affordable for me to invest in real estate in California and Florida. And if I'm being really honest with you, Nealin, like I'm concerned financially. I lay in bed at night unable to sleep because I'm concerned about finances, and I really wish that it was easier for me to invest in some of these places, but I can't. There's too much red tape because of Kamala.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I first of all just want to stop and acknowledge the laying in bed and worrying about finances, and maybe not in this conversation right here because we don't have time, but if this were a real conversation, I might pause and hear more about that. But I think what's interesting to me is that I've seen people who have those same shared issues land in the place of like, we need to make sure that we're not building things in places where, building affordable housing for people who are also like pretty likely like worrying about finances, in places where there'll be a lot of damage. And the reason I say that is because again, the place that I worked was housing and urban development. So we had to do a lot of work around housing, and it was really controversial. And in fact, one of the things that I loved about working at HUD and hated about working at HUD is that that argument, both for building and against building, lived inside the HUD building. And like, you've never seen a righteous fight more like professionally bloody than that argument happening right within the same organization. And I don't think we got it right. I don't think we've gotten all of that right. And I would have liked to have seen a lot less red tape. I think that we deserve less red tape in a lot of cases.
Yeah, it's why I think he's going to be the person to do it.
And that's where I went back to what I am interested in is how you do those reforms that were agreed on in ways that don't also strip the programs that are working or the support that is that's making a difference. And again, I'd love to hear more from you on that.
Yeah. Okay. This is getting hard for me because I didn't know you worked at HUD. And if I did, I would have gone in a different direction.
No, listen, you became an investor just like halfway through that conversation. So I can work at HUD. I did. That was not a lie.
Oh, no, that wasn't a lie, right? You actually did.
I worked.
Right. Exactly. Right. So, okay. Well, I would love to hear from the person, little Blicky, about what you completely disagree on, but I would love to hear a little bit more, on that. So, help me understand though, like it seems like you just kept putting the question back onto the other people.
Yeah, because I actually want to know. Like that's a question that I have. There was nothing that I said in that conversation that wasn't like sort of genuine for me, that I was like having to make up. I think these are tricky things. I've rarely found a problem, and particularly when I was working at HUD, did I ever like get a problem that felt like it had an easy answer to it.
Okay, Nealin.
Yeah.
So we're gonna engage some of the folks in the comment who are making some terrible comments about folks who might not be born in the United States.
Mhm.
And I'm wondering if you want to respond to it. We also don't have to and can keep going on our way, but
So I'm kind of looking at this come through, and it is a little hard to follow in the sense of like it. So uh, I definitely would expect like an I disagree, you are wrong. Uh, I think there's a lot of like advocacy for deporting, but there isn't a lot. There isn't like a lot in the comments to work with. And I think one of the things that you said at the beginning of this is that the comments are cool. They're also limited in the sense of like you can only get so much from them. So if the folks in the comment section are interested in sharing more about the why versus the what of their positions, I would love to engage with that.
okay. And I will say, like, we work really hard here at the Land Event to make sure that everybody can have a seat at the table, and but we have limited patience for hateful language. You're welcome to disagree on abortion. You're welcome to disagree with any of our policy perspectives, but if
Yeah.
you want to engage with us, we would love like more thorough questions or comments.
Yeah, and that is genuine. Like I would love to understand. I would love to understand that. Again, I'm not making that part up. It is pretty important to me and also pretty interesting. But like if a comment's one word, That's just hard to know where it's coming from.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so Nealin, in the interest of time, because it's been 1:25 and we can wait to see if we get any more robust comments or questions that we can respond to. Thank you so much for coming on, by the way. I know it's late. I know you have kids. I also know you might have gotten out of bedtime, which sometimes can feel like a nice perk. I have a meeting. Sorry, I cannot.
I'm going to
But
pretend to live stream again tomorrow.
right, exactly. Let's just schedule it during bedtime. So one of the things that I did want to talk to you about is whether or not we can, because I have a whole list of questions that Brilliant Kieran has put together to ask you that we didn't even touch on, which is great because we have so many different areas that we can go on this. And as we've obviously just seen, that Twitch and some of these other platforms are great places to actually engage and do the work. That was more of like a therapy session, which I can come in with lots of different questions all of the time. But I would love to think about whether or not there is a Common Ground USA consistent conversation here and letting search access that audience to do the work. I don't know what that could look like, but I would love to hear your thoughts on it.
So this is actually a conversation that we've had on the team a lot, which I think is pretty fun. Like what people are doing on Twitch is really interesting, and it is a place of belonging and a place of connection. Ton of people here, and those kinds of things are like, you know, how the world is won. So I feel like, you know, one of the people on our team had this idea. There's a game that was trending for a bit where you had two players, and they each held opposite ends of a piece of glass, and you had to walk this glass, you know, like throughout a game and try to get it not to break. You had to try to keep it intact the whole way. But the two players, like what the game actually is about is like two people actually had to get along and figure out like how they were how the other person is playing, because you could play your side of the glass holding perfectly, but if you're not communicating with the other person, then you're going to drop the glass. So that is like about as perfect a metaphor for the work that we do as there is. Like you can be right, you can be perfect at your game, and you're holding one half of the glass, and it's still going to break if you can't figure out how the other person's playing and how the other person is part of the game, right? So the idea was, could we get people who totally disagree about issues to live stream their game on Twitch, holding the glass and just talking about how they're playing in the game, but also talking about the things that they have disagreements on. And through that conversation and through that game, kind of modeling some of what this looks like. I think that there is just a lot of opportunity to think through gaming and technology and kind of like the digital Twitch space, and how, you know, like what are the assets there? What's interesting? I think what would be interesting to me, what would be awesome to me, is to get ideas from the folks who are watching about like, what would you like to see? What would be interesting to you?
Yeah. I mean, I think I can say with absolute confidence because like you, I am not at professorial level yet. And even though I'm pretty sure there are 2 chapters in my book on how to have courageous conversations, as you can see, um, I also still am just uncomfortable with it. Like I still need to do the work and I don't ever anticipate being able to be like, I can walk in and do any of the conversations. It is so much easier to go on Fox to talk about the thing than it is to sit down with my aunt. We all know that. This is not surprising. But I do wonder, like, as we were workshopping, Nealin, like, I actually could curate a couple of folks on here that had a different perspective than me on said subject. I could
Mhm.
curate it not just with me, but like 2 people, 8 people,
Yeah.
9 people, 1 person. And we could go through the subjects that are like headline news in the US that are like, that's the thing, that's the sticking point. And we can use the content. One, obviously, this content becomes available however we want to make it available. It can either be private or it can be public. We can clip it into 1-minute sections, we can clip it into 7-minute sections or whatever it might be. But watching Nealin, watching facilitators facilitate these kinds of conversations at a scalable level like this feels like, okay, yeah, let's try this quickly. Let's try
Yeah,
this
I think that's
quickly.
really the other thing that I would add is just that this is an interactive conversation with all the people watching, and anybody who wants to add in and be part of the conversation means that, yes, like maybe it is a one-on-one conversation or 2 people, 4 people, 8 people, whatever, but it's also different than just like comments in like on something stationary online. It's an interactive, like you can be
Correct.
part of this kinds of conversation that I think is really cool and a real opportunity.
So I would love to say to you, and this will be an email that will land in your and Jack and, well, no, I guess Maritza and Gabrielle, because obviously she's like the end all be all
Amazing.
Twitch person at Surge. But it really becomes like in September, every Thursday night for a month. Should we try this? Should we? And we can curate it. I think there's a lot still to discuss around like the multi-faith component. If search facilitates, if we want to do like a multi-faith track. And the only reason why I would say land of end is what I explained to Shamal. And again, I'm going to speak a little bit between the lines here, but I know you'll pick it up. Is that having a third party entity do the hosting gives search a little bit of a boundary. If
Yeah.
something is like, oh, we don't want to do that or say that because it's unhelpful, having the other versus you all having to perfectly curate it because it's
Mm,
an entirely search product.
mm,
So if you're invited in here to our, and we can talk about numbers and what the ultimate reach really is. If you guys are invited in here in the same way that you would be invited into a university that you work in or a company that you work in to do the kind like some sort of facilitation that you guys can curate, does it give you guys a little bit of a boundary of safety?
mm, mm. Interesting. Very
Yeah.
interesting.
Which is
Yeah,
what I think
again,
keeps coming
oh, go
keeps
ahead.
coming up. It's just one of the things that keep happening when I'm like, "Let's do a partiality Instagram with art thing," and they're like, "But what?" I'm like, "No, just let the artist do it." And if the artists just do it because they learned from you, your hands off. But that was the work.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I do think this is the work, right? Like this.
I 100%.
And, I think one of the things that I do really appreciate, Jenna, is like everybody's got an aunt or an uncle or somewhere in their family, like a conversation that's hard to have. And you are, I think, generous with the public on being open about a thing that we've all got, like a struggle that we all have. So I think that is also, in these times, it can be hard to be open, and that the modeling of that by itself is a gift. But again, I would just love to hear if you get feedback after this session, if there are people who are, have things that they would like to see. I live at the heart of these kinds of conversations, so I can be blind to where there are gaps out there.
Right.
That makes
You're like,
sense.
"What do you mean? I do this every night." You're like, "This
Mostly
is so easy for me."
no, it's mostly with my kids, and it's very
Yeah,
hard.
I get it. All right, well, let's do this. Let's touch base in the next couple of days. But I do want to think about because I also think there's things that we can test easy. Like I think this conversation, and we got most of our comments in the front of it about like how do you identify the other? How do you say the thing? How do you bring people back from emotion? Like I think that is really where a lot of the angst is.
Mhm.
Um, for like the general population. I also think I feel like that's probably 101 in your playbook a bit. Like I think there's like, the first 3 chapters of Nealin's book, we could do 10 sessions on whenever it works. But it strikes me that like let's just keep this simple and role model how to do this and like
Mm.
let's just go get people from different perspectives and put them on here and let's do it.
Let's just get that done. Let's do that.
We're just gonna do it one by one. There's only 360 million Americans. It won't take us that long.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and it's Thursday, so we still have like
Right.
a work day.
Right. The midterms are only a year and a half away.
Great.
Yeah,
Great.
plenty of time, plenty of time. Okay. Nealin Parker, of Common Ground USA is sincerely doing God's work. Thank you so much for being here. We will see you soon. Thanks to your husband for his work. Thanks to your kids for their patience, and we'll be in touch soon.
Thank you. Thank you. Take care.
See ya.